So in this video, I'm just going to go over the basic tips that I think are going to be useful when teaching someone with visual impairment how to wash dishes. So the first thing is to put all of your utensils in a cup or a container with warm liquid and soap while you're washing the other dishes, so it can have time to soak and get all of the grime off. Especially some of these utensils have cracks and crevices that are hard to reach, like forks. I do that all the time. I think it's a really good practice. Another thing, washing the mouth of a cup. So let's say that like after this had been soaked, it was time to wash this. One thing you can do to wash the mouth is get your sponge and fold it in half like a sandwich, and then put the half, like the middle of that sandwich, on the mouth of the cup, and then just turn the cup back and forth in a rotating manner like you would unscrew a lid. This is the best way to ensure that all of the mouth of the cup has been washed, and then you can go on the inside and then scrub the inside, and then go on the outside and then scrub the outside and then rinse it off. Some things are going to take more than one rinse to get all the soap off, and some things are only going to take one. I think the best way to teach this is first provide feedback in the beginning, like the first or the second time, like the first few times that they wash a cup. You want to let them know if there is still more soap or not, because the soap will stream down in a cup, while like a knife or a fork, you can the water will only stream one way, but there's no way to like make all of the water stream directly back out like a straw. It's gonna puddle at the bottom, and then you have to flip the cup over, and then there might be more soap. So in the beginning, you need to provide fading technique for things like bowls and cups that are a little bit harder to make sure that all of the soap is gone. And then the next thing I want to demonstrate is washing a knife. You can always tell which side the sharp side is on by the curve at the handle. The top of the handle near the blade, one side of it is going to be flush with the flat side of the knife. The other side is going to have some sort of angle or curve. That's how you're going to know which side the sharp side is on. When you're washing a knife, it's like you have to practice a lot of safety. So when you're washing the handle, when you're washing the blade, you can grab the handle and scrub each side. But when you're washing the handle, you want to take all four of your fingers, your pointer, your middle, your ring finger, and your pinky, and put that on the flat side a little bit inward, like halfway into the blade, and then your thumb on the other side, and you're going to have a firm grip on the dull part of the knife. And so you can safely manipulate the knife without having to worry about getting poked unless you're careless. But if you practice caution, you're not going to get cut. And then you could go ahead and scrub the handle as well, and then scrub the blade. And then when you're rinsing this off, and this also applies to forks and spoons, when you're teaching kids or people with visual impairments to rinse off utensils, you can have them point the tip of the handle, like the very top of the handle, place it right underneath the stream, and the blade or the other part of the utensil facing right towards the sink, so it's at a 90-degree angle, completely like pointing down, and it's flush with the stream of the water. So when you turn it on, you can see that the gravity did all the work, and I didn't have to worry about the soap getting everywhere. Another thing is, if you still have soap on your hands after you wash something and then you go to put it away, these suds are much harder to feel than the very big bubbly ones that were in the sink when the sink was completely full of water and soap. Those ones are really bubbly and sudsy, but these leftover ones, you can't really feel them. You can hear it if you tap it, but it sounds very similar. It sounds kind of similar to if you like tap with just water. So every time you're washing anything, you want to rinse off your hands as well. Now my hands are completely rinsed off. The blade and the handle of the knife are completely clean, and there's no more suds. So I think that's a good practice as well when teaching people with visual impairments how to do dishes. Another thing that you need to take into consideration is the person's sensory preferences. What I mean by this is there are multiple different types of scrubbers that you can use when teaching people with visual impairments like how to scrub their dishes. There's this one I have in my right hand. It has a handle, and the bristles are farther away from my body, so I know I won't be touching any of the food. This device is going to be touching all of the food. Then I have this scrubber, and this one is called a Scrub Daddy, and it's actually made to change consistency with the temperature of the water. So if the water is cold, this is going to get really hard. But right now it's still soft because it was just in warm water. So things like that, like these ones are really rough to touch, and they're not very friendly or forgiving. While these ones are much more forgiving. It's just plastic. There's nothing that I'm worried I'm going to touch. I'm definitely not going to touch any food. Same with like different types of soaps. This is just a very basic blue dishwashing soap, but there are some that are made like eco-friendly that are clear and they don't have a smell to them. But those ones also don't set up as much, or they might set up with only warm water or only cold water. So take the child's or the person's sensory preferences into consideration when you're teaching them. And another thing regarding sensory preferences is if there's any food left in these containers, scraping them out with with a dirty fork or spoon is completely normal. A lot of people do that. So you don't have to touch all of the food. So that's another thing that you can take into consideration when teaching someone with a visual impairment how to wash their own dishes. So I also think a really good way to stimulate critical thinking after you've taught them all of the different tools. I mean, there's even these kinds of tools that you put inside of straw to clean the inside of a straw, because you can't really use a sponge. After you teach them all the different tools and the different methods for cleaning stuff like soaking and scrubbing, and then there's even sometimes like things that are hard to get off, you use baking soda and vinegar. After you're done teaching them all of the different techniques and methods and tools, you want to try and I think a good idea would be to introduce them to something that they've never seen before. Like this, for example, is a mocha pot. It's not very common, but it's pretty easy to clean. So this mocha pot, it unscrews and it screws back together. And from the outside, you can see that there's two bases where the screw meets. So once you unscrew it, you'd expect to find two different components. That's all you really know about it. If you don't know what a mocha pot is, it is for coffee. But after you unscrew it, you can see, well, the lid comes off, and inside the lid is this like metal thing that protrudes up that's way too small to get a scrubber inside of. And it has it has these kind of indents along the side. So that would be hard to clean. And then after you unscrew it, you can see there's a coffee filter. That is a metal piece of like a round metal piece that has holes in it, and it has an indent, and that's what filters the coffee. And then after you remove that, you can see that there's kind of like a smaller basin at the bottom of that also comes out, and that's where the coffee is stored. And I just used it, so it's still wet and it's clumped together. And then there's a metal protruding part at the bottom of that, about the same size as the one in the main container that we saw that a sponge also couldn't fit in. You'd probably have to use a straw cleaner to get that. And then once you remove that, well, then you can see the big basin at the bottom that holds the fresh water. So the way it works is you put the fresh water in here, put the coffee on top, put this strainer on top, and then you screw the top onto this bottom container, and then the coffee bubbles at the bottom and shoots up and goes into this thing. And there's even a plastic ring, and this plastic ring actually goes at the very bottom where the two components connect and screw together to ensure that the water doesn't escape. This is like a plastic ring. But these are all things that you wouldn't normally teach in a lesson, but they're things that can be generalized. Like after you've learned all of the methods for washing dishes, you can easily generalize, well, now I just know how to scrub this. I know that I need a straw cleaner for the metal part inside of the main basin at the very top to clean that, and then I might need a straw cleaner to also clean the component that holds all of the coffee grounds. So I think that would be a really good technique and method to use for engaging critical thinking, is introduce them to something that you didn't teach, but watch how they adapt and use the skills that you just taught them to clean something that they never experienced before.